Good evening, Jeopardy fans, and we are live here on hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel, presented by thejeopardyfan.com. Once again, and as always, I am Andy Saunders, and I will be moderating tonight's discussion. So, our panel this evening, let's get right into the introductions. We have three so far. We may be joined by a fourth a little bit later on. If he decides to come in, I will introduce him at that point. But our panel right now, first up, I think I'm going to go with alphabetical order tonight because you guys have all been on hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel in some form before. So our first panelist, Andrew Powell. First of all, congratulations on your quarterfinal victory last week. And thanks for joining us.
Anytime. Pleasure.
Our second panelist, also a victor in the quarterfinals, Jason Sterlacci. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Andy. It's a pleasure to be here as always.
And last, certainly not least, a 12-time champion last season, and certainly one of the many who could been considered a favorite in the tournament this year. Unfortunately, things didn't work out for him this time, but thanks for joining us on hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel, Seth Wilson.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
And as always, if you've got a question or a comment for tonight's panel, you can leave it on the hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel on Twitter. There's also a YouTube live chat. You can also leave your questions or comments there. So, I think the first question I'm going to pose for our panel tonight, how difficult is it, as the week goes on, as you guys are kind of waiting in the green room, seeing your, fellow competitors be picked off three at a time to go on stage? How difficult is it, just as the week goes on, waiting in the green room? How much more difficult does it get?
I think that's a question for those guys.
Should I go first? I guess I waited the longest.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was wondering if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but as the day went on, it just got more and more surreal because we hadn't seen daylight for, 8 hours or something. And we were just stuck in that room, and people kept getting called out, and we had to have lunch in there. And the room started smelling like lunch. And I think we were in the middle of our third movie, Justin and John and I, when we got called. And we were just ready to do anything at that point. So in a way, it was very relaxing because by the time we were on, there was like nothing left to do except play. So there was no nervousness, no nothing. But it was an experience. I mean, I'm sorry that as a result, I didn't get to see any of the other quarterfinals. I do feel that I would have liked to at least see something. But that was the way it went.
Now, what was your experience, from waiting up until Thursday, Seth?
The opposite. I found that every time I didn't get called, I got more nervous, and I think I paced a pretty big hole in the floor. My first time on the show, I was called for a Monday game, so I had spent very little time in the green room. I mean, I guess everybody does, like, you go out and watch the games, but, I had never, had to watch or, sit around and wait and think about it. I had just kind of been thrown in and immediately started playing. So the longer it went on, the more I just sort of, surreal is a good word for it. I mean, it feels like you're in, a Beckett play or something, where, there's occasionally these people will come in and take three members of the group out at a time, and then you're just sitting there watching old movies. I think we watched Planes, Trains, and Automobiles and Iron Man and
Terminator probably out there.
Yeah. I think we were wrapping up Iron Man when I got called. So for me, I was hoping to go earlier, but and the longer I waited, I mean, it was fun to get to spend time backstage chatting with people. And that was really cool because it was, in the lobby that morning and then in the green room again, it felt like I was like, wow, I've seen all of these people on my TV before. It was kind of like being surrounded by like people who like TV stars almost. But yeah, I found that the longer I waited, the more my nerves stacked up.
Do you have something you'd like to add, Jason?
Not really. I was anticipating either being called Monday or Friday because of the ribbons. I knew they were going to talk to me about that. And when they didn't call me for Monday, I had started like mentally preparing myself for the Friday game. And when they were like, Jason, you're going out for Tuesday, I was like, oh, thank God. Because I don't think I could have made it. I would have probably wrecked the place just waiting to go out for as long as Andrew and John and Justin had to wait.
Now, I know I was kind of expecting a comment from this person on the YouTube chat because unfortunately he wasn't able to actually join us inside the panel itself tonight. But Buzzy Cohen has something to say on this, and he says, I thought going first would let me relax, but it was really stressful watching all of the subsequent games.
There is a little bit of a stress factor to sitting there and watching the other games. They talk about the advantage that, they sequester players so that they don't have an advantage. They can't see what's going on, stuff like that. But there is one little thing that the players who play early get, and that's that they get to see their opponents and how they play. And it can be stressful watching these other people play, people you're friends with, but also at the same time, you're sizing up the competition.
Mm-hmm. So kind of pursuant to that last half of Buzzy's statement, that's kind of a good segue into my next question, actually. And so this one's certainly for Jason a little bit more. And also, Buzzy, if you're still here listening to us, how less stressful is it not having to be sit and wait for the wild cards? Actually winning a quarterfinal.
It is the best feeling. I know there was some criticism for Buzzy's performance on Monday since he bet so much and technically put himself into harm's way. But, I defend that because there's something to be said for not having to worry about whether or not you're going to make the cutoff for a wild card. I mean, I definitely played to win my game. Maybe not as aggressively as Buzzy did, but, I wanted to make sure that I didn't have to stress out about, 15,000 or whatever. Will that be enough?
Yeah.
So I think there's something to that.
Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, you were seated beside or seated close to, Tim, who spent 4 games pretty much on the bubble.
He sure did.
How was that feeling?
Well, he was convinced after the game that he had no chance. What did he have? 11-5? Was that the amount?
Yeah, 11-5.
Yeah, he was convinced 11-5 was going to bounce him out. He thought he was going to be the alternate or something along those lines. And when he got in at the very last minute, I mean, he didn't know he was in until Justin revealed his wager. I'm reasonably sure he stopped breathing. I was sitting next to him, and he sat there with this look of just utter shock on his face, basically mouth agape. And I was like, Tim, you made it. Congratulations. And he just sat like a deer in headlights, just like, Tim, you okay? You okay? So I can imagine there's an extra level of stress there, especially, as it's going on, because he, like I said, he wrote himself off completely.
Well, when you start second guessing yourself and stuff, right?
And Buzzy has contributed again from the YouTube chat. Mainly, one, he doesn't think he could have handled the stress, and that's one reason why he bet for the win. Mm-hmm. And also, Brad Rudder gave his approval to the to Buzzy's wager at O'Brien's last Wednesday. So,
I'm sure he did.
So, I think, you made reference to Justin's wager, as in Tim didn't realize that he was in until Justin's wager was revealed, which was kind of, a little bit on the on the big side.
Sure.
Did Justin give any insight to any of you guys as to what his thought process was there?
No. I think I might have mentioned that to him the day after, but no. I think he was pretty confident in the category, and he felt comfortable. Probably he hadn't given a whole lot of thought to what the wild card sort of cutoff would be. I think if he had thought about it, he probably wouldn't have, right? Because he should have bet 0.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. That was the longest Final Jeopardy. I don't know if you guys remember though, because they took a very, very long time to before the whole reveal, and then the what do you call them? The judges were conferring amongst themselves, and there was a very long break in play, to the point where I started laughing, and Alex Trebek was like, "Andrew, you're laughing at me," or something like that, and it just dragged on for a while.
Yeah, it was a good 15 minutes. Now that you mention it, I totally forgot about that they stopped for that long.
Yeah, so it totally felt like that up on stage. And we didn't know what was going on. I remember asking Glenn what was going on, and he didn't know, and we were just wondering what was going on.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, as it turns out, it sounds like they were trying to, obviously making absolutely 100% sure that it had never been referred to as the George's Cross.
That's right.
In order to, because obviously the last wildcard spot comes down to whether or not they accept Justin's answer.
Yep.
By the way, I think this is a good time to introduce our special guest who's just joined us here on Hashtag Jeopardy Live panel. Welcome to the 2015 Tournament of Champions winner, Alex Jacob.
Hey, thanks for having me, Andy.
Hey, Alex.
Hey, guys, congrats. Congrats on you guys.
Thank you. You too.
So I think you have some insight here. This was my opening question, but we can go back to it because obviously I think you have some insight here, having to play the Friday game yourself in your tournament. How tough was it for you waiting for the entire day in the green room?
I think it was okay. It was definitely a long. It was definitely a long day, but it was something that I feel like I was mentally prepared for. But it was definitely, it kind of got tense, as the day goes on and more people are getting called to play, and you're kind of narrowing down the possibilities of who you're going to play. Oh, they wouldn't pair me with this person, or I actually knew that I couldn't play Kristen because we had played together against a Quizball Playing Robot. But there was a couple other conflicts like that. I couldn't play against Catherine because she actually knew my wife's sister. But besides that, it's kind of like who are you going to play? And then, as I tweeted this, the weirdest thing is when it gets down to the end and it's just you and two other people, and it's just you three and the chaperone sitting and watching. I think it was Raiders of the Lost Ark.
And
in our case. Yeah, and the alternate, right? Exactly, the alternate. Kind of making awkward jokes, trying to break the tension here and there. But I probably rambled a little longer than I needed to on that answer, but it was all right. Okay. It wasn't too bad.
Yeah. And actually something that I just thought of, and I know Jason alluded to this when he said that you guys were able to, you're able to kind of size up the opposition watching from the audience. Now, this one, I think Andrew and Alex both had a similar experience here in that you, Alex, you kind of didn't have a chance to see Matt Jackson play in the quarterfinal. Andrew, you didn't have the chance to see Austin play in the quarterfinal, and obviously you had to sort of size them up as best you could, having, not really having much information on them. So what's that feeling, not going, in your case, Andrew, not going into specifics of tonight's game at all, but how is that, going up against someone, a super champion, where you're not really sure of how, what their strengths where their strengths lie, because you haven't actually seen them?
It was hard for me, I think, because I went in there that second morning hoping A, not to have to play first, and then hoping B, not to have to play Austin. And of course I was foiled on both counts. But it was a little tough, exactly for that reason. I had no idea. We knew how many games he had won because they told us. And then we also knew that he had won, a humongous amount of money. So that was all I had to go on, and it was a little bit of an imperfect information situation. Whereas I think the converse was true, that if he had done his homework, he in a way knew everything about me. So it was also an asymmetrical information situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I was wondering, I guess for Jason and Andrew, like, who were you kind of hoping not to play, after seeing those first, or I guess Andrew, you didn't see any of it, but, I assume you had someone in the audience, you were kind of piecing it together after the fact, I'm sure, as I did in my tournament. And, beforehand, I might have said Austin, but then after the first week of games, he might not have been number one on your radar. So I was just curious, what your assessment was there.
For me personally, I did not want to play Andrew, and I did not want to play Buzzy. Just skill-wise, I've said this before. I don't think I've actually ever said this to you, Andrew, to your face, but you are like one of the best Jeopardy players I've ever seen.
Much too kind.
But I did not want to play you under any circumstances. And I did not want to play Buzzy because I knew his the way he plays is very aggressive, and I'm not a very aggressive player. And the last thing I needed was to have to deal with like massive daily doubles and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Now, I just want to interject here with 1 second, and I'm going to agree with you, Jason, because there are exactly two people that I know of who have run 4 categories in a single game of Jeopardy. One of them is Ken Jennings, and the second of them is on our panel tonight, and the second of them is Andrew. So,
I'll take that. Yeah.
So, I think Jason was very justified in saying that if, people who don't want to play against Andrew, he's probably justified.
This is great to hear, because I had no idea, obviously.
No,
I did my homework, Andrew. That's all I'll say.
Now, in terms of how the boards played out last week, I know that I took a look at it because, actually, ironically enough, John Eisenman expressed his surprise halfway through the week that the Wednesday game had 10 triple stumpers. And then I realized, well, 4 of the 5 quarterfinals had 10 triple stumpers. So, exactly. So, from your perspective, do you think the games, were, pretty even in terms of, not having one board that was too much more difficult than the other ones, or one board that wasn't too much easier than the others?
I'll let somebody else take that first. I have an opinion, but I'll wait.
I don't have an opinion.
No?
Seth?
Yeah, all I know is that I feel like, but this is probably influenced by the fact that 3 of them I saw from my couch, and 1 of them I saw from the audience, and then 1 of them I saw while I was playing it. But I felt like, in terms of the stuff that I was likely to know, the board I got was the least conducive to my skill set. But I think, having watched them all now, I feel like they were pretty fairly balanced. Although, you could put me in a room for 1,000 years and I never would have been able to come up with the answer to my final Jeopardy question. But yeah, no, I think they were, like, looking at it objectively, I think they were fairly equally balanced.
As luck would have it, Seth, your final Jeopardy on Thursday, playing from home. I was in much the same boat. It took me 10 minutes of it literally took me 10 minutes of Googling to get to anywhere close to the right answer. So
that makes me feel significantly better.
Whereas most of the other ones, it was, for I at home, I went 3 for 5. The first Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I got right away. Yours, 10 minutes of Googling, and Fridays, I at least had it down to Edward or George, and went the wrong way. Yeah. But it was at least fairly. Yeah, I found yours to be the toughest of the 5, but.
Yeah, I would confess also to not having that one. I not having heard of the selling apples in the Depression. I kind of I thought of states that have a crop, so I thought of Idaho or Washington for apples, and in my head I kind of just went with Idaho, which is probably.
I went to Nebraska for
silly.
There's Nebraska for corn. There's Iowa for corn. There's Florida for apples.
Florida for everything.
Yeah. Florida for oranges, I should say. I mean, even Oregon has some apple orchards, and I mean, a lot of people thought, New York has a lot of orchards, and it was, they were like, why would they send the apples across the country sort of deal? And there was just.
It was a strange final.
I also thought Washington game is more of a fun fact. Washington and apples is more of a kind of a trivia fact that comes up, so it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we've got a question here on the YouTube chat from Jay O'Brien. I'll get to that in a second. Bridget McNulty just chimed in with something from Lisa's watch party. And she says, I was at Lisa's watch party and we were all talking through the possible responses when the bar manager said, "Oh, apples, Washington, easy." So it might have been a... Yeah. There were a lot of people who, if they're familiar with, apples in the Depression, they're going to get it right away. But if you're not, then you're going to, you may struggle significantly on that final. So I guess maybe it's just what you might have been exposed to, for sure.
For what it's worth, Seth, everyone in the audience, those of us who had already played were like, what the hell is this asking for? So we were all lost. I think somebody, I don't know who it would have been, but somebody I think said apples. It might have been Pranjal, but the rest of us were just like, no idea.
Yeah. So this question now coming from Jay O'Brien on the YouTube chat. Was there any champion that did not make the tournament that you were happy not to have to play?
Yes. Tim Cutts,
yes.
Who was our alternate.
Yes.
I mean, all respect to him, but I was so relieved that he missed the cut because he was a beast in those 4 games that he won. It stung for him being the alternate. I know he wasn't happy being the alternate, and I don't blame him. But I think the rest of us that had watched his games were just like, oh, it's a good thing he's not actually playing us.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, that would be my answer too.
Now, Alex, was there anyone in your tournament that you felt that way about?
Well, I will say, I was kind of hoping that someone, that the tournament would not be held so soon, or someone would go on a run and knock Michael Bilo off, the 3-time champion, because I thought he was very good and actually, perhaps, probably one of the top 5 players in that field. It's hard to say, but he ended up making it. So Yeah, Tim. I put together like a prediction piece for this tournament for stats and all that kind of stuff, and I was kind of working on it, and I thought Tim was going to be in the tournament, and he was very high. My stats were very high on Tim, so I was kind of bummed for him that he didn't make it. Shout out to Tim if he's watching.
I actually did not start my own stat stuff, so I wish I had thought to take a look at my own stuff for Tim, but I actually did not. So probably should have, but sorry.
I'll share it with you, Andy. I have stats on everybody because I'm a crazy person, and yeah, Tim was one of my top 3 or 4 people, with Andrew, with Seth, and who was the other one? Oh, Alan.
Okay. So for you watching from the audience, Jason, how surprising was it for you to see, okay, well, Austin, 12 games, $400,000, and then be absolutely demolished by Alan in the quarterfinal?
I was a little surprised. We got to watch him during practice, and he looked like he had the goods. It wasn't, like a fluke or anything like that. And I remember I was sitting next to Buzzy, or Buzzy was sitting in front of me or something like that. And we were making predictions, and I was like, oh, this Austin guy is going to win. And he turned to me and he's like, Alan's going to kill him. And I was like, no, I mean, Alan's a great player. Don't get me wrong. And then, Alan controlled the buzzer like it was a part of his body. So I was a little surprised, but others not so much.
Okay. So I know that you mentioned, Seth, that the board wasn't particularly conducive to your knowledge base. I feel as though, Andrew, you had the opposite experience in your quarterfinal. How relieving was it to A, see classical music in Double Jeopardy, B, get a daily double in it?
It was, it's like one of those, Cliff Clavin moments or something. It was nice to finally be able to say true daily double, yada, 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 because as I said, I'd never done it before. So check one more thing off. Yeah, just got lucky. I mean, there was a classical music category in my original run too, so happened twice.
Mm-hmm.
Aren't you also like a French expert too? And you got a French category.
You're absolutely right. So it was that first French category, yes.
Now,
so were you kind of thinking you wanted to be aggressive in that spot, or was it just purely classical music? I got to do this.
I think it was the latter. If it had been country music, there's no way I would have said it.
No, sure.
So yeah, it was pretty category dependent, right?
Sure.
So, my question for all of you guys: what was your study regimen like for the Tournament of Champions?
Well, I watched Jason last week, and he said Sporkle, so I'm just going to follow him. And I say, I don't like to study; I just like to play. So it was a lot of Sporkle for me.
I'm sure Jason's happy to hear that, being a Sporkle editor himself.
Sporkle moderator.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
it's like just going up the ranks. They're going to start paying me soon.
It's just like playing games is so much more fun than studying.
Agreed.
Yeah, I feel like this is turning into a Sporkle commercial, but I did the same thing. I had a set of like 10 games that I would play first thing every morning and last thing before I went to bed every night.
Now, what was Jason? Were you also kind of lots of Sporkle?
Never. I don't even know what Sporkle is. I'm not wearing a Sporkle hoodie or anything right now. Yeah. I think I crammed something like 4,000 games in the month before the taping. just history, science, stuff I knew I wasn't that great in, but stuff that I knew I could improve in, because art, music, that stuff, classical music, I know that's not my forte, and I know I'm never going to get that. So just stuff I knew I had room for improvement on was my focus.
Did you refresh yourself on the landlocked countries Sporkle quiz at any point?
No, I did not. But it turns out a map of Africa is permanently burned into my brain, apparently. Because in my teacher's tournament run, I also had a question about African geography for a final. So, the gods must be crazy.
Now, going in 2 years ago, Alex, what was your study regimen like for the TOC?
I'm more clinical, more like I'm studying for a test in school with notes, and nothing fun like playing games.
That's what you want.
No, I mean it's a mostly I would say J Archive. I mean, just going through that, I would say if Sporkle was their main source, then I would have to say Jeopardy Archive was mine.
Okay. I just got a question here from Corey Harris. He's just joining in, but to answer Corey's the first part of your question, no, I haven't asked this, so I will do it now. Did any of you guys get a Final Jeopardy or a Daily Double from a different quarterfinal that you were glad you didn't run into? Other than, I think, possibly Thursdays.
Yeah, Hunter's Daily Double in the Monday game. I was so happy that wasn't mine, because that was tough. Also, hi Corey.
Anything that you saw from the anything else you saw from the couch, Seth, or from the studio audience that you didn't really or that you wouldn't have done very well on?
Yeah, the one Andrew got, because classical music, like, I am aware that it exists. I'm aware that humans made music before 1950. But beyond that, I could not tell you anything about any of it. And so I knew he was going to get it because, I had watched, and geography and classical music were the two things that I felt like if I were playing in a game with Andrew, I was just going to punt on those if they came up and I was playing them. But when I saw it, I was like, it's going to be really cool when he knows this in just a second. And then I heard the question and was like, that was really cool that he knew that. I didn't. So that one, that one was one where I was like, it's really nice that one went to him, because, that classical music category is always a stumper for me on Jeopardy.
Same here, Seth.
Okay, so a random question here for Andrew from Jonathan Graham. How much of your winnings is going to go towards ice cream in pretzel cones at Gibson's?
Nice inside joke there. Gibson's is this local bakery in Oberlin. I'm not a big sweet person, so none in fact. But I appreciate the question. I appreciate the local color.
You getting paid for this, Andy? You should be getting a little kickback here.
I'll think about it. So, a question for you, Alex, from Michael Thomas. When you were, going back a couple years, do you remember how the other people? I mean, first of all, did you have watch parties during your tournament?
Yeah, at work. It's on at 3:30 p.m. in Chicago, so it was kind of on in the office. So yeah, we had some mini watch parties both of those days.
So how did the watch party kind of react when you went true daily double in the or in the first part of the final?
The first part of yeah, I mean, it was kind of, they were kind of surprised in the beginning, but then, they came to expect it from me, I guess. So, but by the end, they're kind of expecting me to bet it all every time, and then if I laid up, they were disappointed. But.
Okay, so my next question, I hope this comes across okay. I'm not sure, but I'll ask it anyway. Now, this TOC had a really deep field, and so at least to me, it seems like there was a lot of potential for people doing not as well as they would have liked in this tournament. So, did you have kind of thoughts as to ways you might deal with the possibility that you might not do as well as you'd like going in?
I had a pretty lengthy conversation with Vaughn Winchell a few months ago that I kept in the back of my mind the entire time, as well as a conversation with Colby Burnett. And so much of making it to the end of a tournament of champions and winning it is a part of its luck. I mean, your semifinal matchups, who you match up against in the quarterfinals, stuff like that. So, I kept in the back of my mind that it was an honor to be there. It was great to be there. And whatever happens, happens. It's just extra money on top of the teachers' tournament win.
Seth and Andrew, do you guys have thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly wanted to do better than I did. And I think Jason, that's, I tried to look at it that way too. And I was a little, I was disappointed that I lost in the first round. And I feel like you'd have to be. But I went and drank all night and stayed out until 2 a.m. and then got up the next morning and went to watch the finals. So that was my plan, and it worked exactly as I had drawn it up. But no, I mean, it's you're playing against, what do they say? Like 70,000 people a year take the test, 3,000 get an audition, 400 get on the show. And then of those 400 who make it onto the show, you're playing against the 15 best from this time the last 2 years. So it's really difficult to feel too bad about that. It is kind of just like extra, like getting to go back and play again was fun enough. That was the thing for me, is like, I have said since I was on the show the first time that I would do this for free. And the fact that you can win money doing it is amazing. So just getting to play another game was worth the price of admission as far as I was concerned.
Well, I just feel like I got thrown into the deep end in my very first game, where I really, should have lost in a lot of ways against Margaret Miles and McKinney Sizemore. And ever since that first game, I've been a firm believer in a lot of it is luck, as Jason was saying, and maybe I'm a good player, but even the best player, the people I beat in my first game were also very good players, and they could easily have gone on to do exactly what I did. So knowing that going into the tournament, I really felt, I would be very happy if things worked out well, but I was, fully prepared for it not to, just as, that very first game that I ever played. So I was very relieved, actually, when I won the Friday game, more than anything else, that things had gone better than I thought they would. I was not particularly happy during the rehearsals. I felt I was slow. I felt that other people were sort of really on their game, and I was maybe not 100% or whatever. So it was a relief just to get through the day there.
Very nice, very nice. Now, I think I can. I'm going to ask this one specifically of Alex. Now, at this point, Alex, who is your? Who do you think is going to win? And obviously, three members of our panel.
Who do I think at this point?
Yeah. Sorry for putting you on the spot. If you'd like, I mean, I talked to you about this, Alex, and
well, I mean, yeah, okay, sorry, go on.
Sorry, I'll give you a chance to formulate some thoughts here. Now, my thought is, just by how the semifinals worked themselves out, I thought that just on how everything, just because of how close everything is and how well he played last week, I think Alan has the best chance of winning at this point, just because he has the best chance of making it to the final, I thought, out of anyone. And by that point, even though, once he gets there, he may not be the favorite once he gets there, but just by the fact that I think if you play it out enough times, he makes the final most often, he's probably going to, he probably has the best chance of winning at this point.
That's interesting. So before I answer this, are we in a pre-spoiler?
Yes, we are in the pre-spoiler world here. So
okay. So fair enough. Okay, so just my math, beforehand, which means nothing. Said to predict Austin. Based on watching the first week, if I were to judge everyone's performances, it's tough, but I would say Alan, Andrew, and Jason, those three had the best performances in the first week. So I would say one of those three. Particularly Jason, I saw you didn't have any misses, which I think everyone else had at least one miss.
That sounds about right from my recollection.
But it's it's hard if I guess if I'm purely ranking who had the best performance the first week, I would give it to Alan, locking out the what many people who might say was the pre-tournament favorite. I would give it to him, but it's close.
Well, my sense was Alan really came prepared for this.
He did.
But it might also come from the fact that maybe he had more time than the rest of us. I don't know. I certainly had next to no time to really do anything.
More time in his life.
Yeah, more time in his life, I think.
Yeah.
As a younger person, as well,
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not. Is he? How old is Alan?
He's mid-20s.
10, according to the friends who were watching with me.
Gotcha.
Well, Alex did introduce him as a college champion.
Yeah.
Which was the single funniest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, he looks, he looks a young-looking guy.
So, okay, I mean, that was the first thing that I heard about the Tournament of Champions from people who were in the audience and, told me so here's some of the stuff that went down. And so that was the first thing I'd heard was that, Alex introduced Alan as a college champion. So who exactly had to stop proceedings and said, you have to retape this? So who walked on? Did Alan react really strangely, or did the producers be like, stop, cut?
Yeah, Alan looked a little weird, but the producers ran on stage, I want to say 5 seconds later. We all sat there, we all were like, Alan wasn't a college champion. Alan won 6 games. And I think, yeah, I want to say Glenn ran on stage, but I don't remember who it was exactly. And they were like, no, he wasn't a college champion. So they had to reshoot the entire intro.
I always like hearing stories like that because it's always fun to hear some of that behind the scenes stuff for sure.
Sure.
Okay, so let me just quickly peruse the YouTube chat to see if there's anything else that I'd like to. One from Alex Epstein I think is interesting for Jason, because I know you seem to have a lot of numbers on possible opponents. Did you do Did you do any sort of intel on Philip Tew, and how would you have felt about playing him had he made it?
That's a good question. Philip was a good player, but once I started to get serious about things, I knew Philip was out of the running, so I didn't really try to do that much research. I mean, he won 3 games and like 66,000 or something like that?
It was 3 games and closer to 96,000.
Oh, that's right. That's right. He won a ton for 3 games. That's right. Yeah. By the time I started to like really start researching, Philip was, I think, the 15th person on the tournament tracker on your site and on Jeopardy site, and I was like, there's no way. There's no way he's going to stay on. But I did do some research into a little bit. He was a good player. I think he would have been formidable in the tournament.
Mm-hmm. Now, sort of something a little more amusing considering the semifinal matchups. I know. I'm not sure. I can't remember who it was who uncovered this, but Jason Hess had a tweet. I believe it was probably during Lisa Schlitt's run, calling that you were going to be paired against her in the semifinals. Jason.
Oh yeah, Jason Hess said that.
Yeah, Jason Hess said that. So, how amusing was it to have that tweet of his rediscovered over the weekend? Kind of like almost your 27 World Series champion Houston Astros out of
yeah. I wish he had predicted somebody else. I really think, and obviously I'm biased because it's my match, but I really thought my semifinal match was like the match of death. 3 winners. You got Buzzy, who is a great wagerer and a great player. You got Lisa, who, I mean, on any given day is a fantastic player. And, I like to think of myself as being pretty good. So I wish Jason Hess had said something. I don't know who, maybe somebody who only won 1 game instead, somebody who wasn't in the field. I've got Sterlacci versus Margaret Miles, something like that. Although I don't know that I want to play Margaret either.
Yeah, I don't know if Margaret Miles would have been any better for you. Be careful what you wish for with Margaret Miles.
Yeah, that's true. Good point.
No, I agree. If Alan, Andrew, and Jason were the top 3 of the week, I would say Lisa and Buzzy are 4 and 5, somewhere in there. So that is definitely a tough matchup.
Interestingly enough, on my own personal Facebook, and I'm probably going to, ask for permission to copy this and throw it out there publicly, but there was quite a discussion on my own personal Facebook today as to, seedings for the semifinals. And my friend Gordon Arsenault, I know some of you who may recognize that name. He does a lot of he does a lot of statistical work. He's at Princeton now. He's done a lot of Quiz Bowl moderating as well. That's where a few of you may recognize that name from. But basically, he's gone through and ranked the semifinals and seeded the semifinals, and actually came to a conclusion that this year's semifinals were actually pretty fairly seeded. So
that's fine. I didn't feel that way in the moment. Let's just say.
As it turns out, Jason, looking at this, Gordon would have actually given you the number 1 seed. But...
Oh, I saw that.
Okay,
I saw that. Believe me, I saw that.
So from that perspective, that kind of very...
I don't think I earned that, but I saw that.
Fair enough. So moving on, What's in store for all you guys post Jeopardy? Lots of quiet.
There is no post Jeopardy.
It never goes away. I don't really. I mean, you know, life goes on, right? I'm not sure how to answer that question in a way. In a way, I was very glad to just come back to my normal routine, and you know, it's nice to have a life post Jeopardy. So I'm just going to live it.
Jason and Seth?
I mean, I'm looking forward to just continuing my trivia stuff. I'm doing Geek Bowl in February. I'm looking forward to that. Seeing a lot of people that I haven't seen since Tacona. I'm planning on doing Tacona again. So, I mean, the games will continue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like the standard response is like one of two responses. Like you either lean in and becomes kind of trivia obsessive, or you kind of withdraw and you're kind of never to be seen from again. As far as
I'm definitely the former. Seth, what about you?
I'm undecided.
It sounds from the pre-show that Seth is one of those, you know, all but dissertation PhD students.
Yeah, so I'm trying to finish that, which is like trying to fill a quarry up by throwing pebbles into it. So one day, maybe I'll be done with that, and then I can. Unfortunately, the town where I live in right now doesn't have any trivia to speak of, so maybe I'll try to get something going there. But to have tentative plans to be at Tacona next year, and then this season of Learned League has just started up, so I've got that going. And then looking for employment. So if anybody out there needs somebody with no discernible skills, I am proficient in the MS Office suite, and I have a flexible sense of morality. So if that sounds like it would be a good fit for any business that you may have, I am available and can be reached through my agent, Jason Sterlacci.
Oh, perfect. I get a 10% cut.
Yeah.
So, Alex, a couple people on the YouTube chat are asking, how much poker are you playing these days?
Not much, to be honest. Every once in a while, we go out to the World Series, play a couple events, but not too much these days.
Okay. So, Alex, do you have any questions that you want to ask of tonight's panel that I haven't asked, or?
Oh man, I should be prepared with something here, huh?
I mean, I figure because you've done a lot of your own your own analytics, your own prediction work. I thought in case you had anything you'd like to see asked, maybe, I don't know.
I mean, who you were all fearing heading into the tournament? Obviously you didn't know Austin, but who did you kind of have your eye on besides Austin before you showed up?
For me, it was Andrew. Like I said earlier, yeah.
Yeah, Andrew or Alan.
I would say Jason and Seth, actually.
Oh.
And Buzzy,
flattering.
I have a thing about Buzzy, but whatever. It's hard to play against him. I agree with Jason.
Now, does he seem to, up his game based on, the strength of, or the perceived strength of his opponent?
Buzzy.
Yeah, Buzzy. Because there were a lot of games where it feels like, I don't know if there was just a tough set, a tough couple of weeks worth of boards, but I mean, I think, Alex, your numbers probably played this out as well. A lot of the time his score going into Final Jeopardy wasn't particularly, stellar. I mean, obviously he kept winning, but the analytics part of it, certainly was weaker compared to a few people in the field. And yet, he beat Andrew. He won 8 more after that. And he's currently, he had $30,000 in his TOC quarterfinals. So
what did you make of, him and obviously Justin? A couple of people weren't really playing for wild cards, this tournament, or, kind of bet really big in Final Jeopardy when conventional wisdom would say not to. I mean, were you guys really surprised by that, or was there any kind of talk about that, or what did you guys have in mind for that? Were you guys thinking wild card? Were you guys have a number in mind?
I was imagining like 14,000 or something like that. Justin surprised me. I mean, I don't know about that, but Justin surprised me for sure, because he was not going to win that game, because I was so far ahead of him, and I was not going to bet a lot.
Right.
He was playing for the wild card, so that did surprise me.
I remember watching. Was he on Jeopardy live panel, Andy? Or am I?
He was on Jeopardy live panel. The last episode before the tournament of panelists he was on.
Yeah, I believe he said something about that, like about he doesn't really, he said something about not caring about wagering or something like that. I don't exactly remember what he said, but he said something about wagering that I found a little surprising. And if that's how his mentality is, I mean, more power to him. But I think it hurt him in that game.
Well, yeah, obviously.
I think that was
for sure. Obviously,
certainly, that certainly that was topic number 1 for discussion this past weekend for sure. But
no, it surprised me because I think, I mean, maybe I'm having a bad memory, but I think in my tournament, everyone pretty much was playing really conservative and really had the wild card in mind. Almost everyone to a man was kind of playing for a number. I was kind of shocked to see a couple of those. We remember Justin because he gets knocked out, but if
Buzzy had missed that final.
Buzzy misses the final, exactly. His looks bad too, but
Buzzy's actually reminded me a lot of.
Doesn't matter if you get it right.
Sorry, Buzzy's actually reminded me a lot of Scott Renzoni from about 15 years ago almost now. The 2004 Tournament of Champions, he put out a really, really big number and knocked himself down to like 3,000. And that was just one of those, even back then where, where people weren't really caring about wild cards as much, weren't really looking that closely at numbers, but there were a lot of heads scratched back then as to what the heck he was thinking. But okay, was there anything you guys thought I'd bring up tonight but didn't?
What did we have for lunch or something like that?
Well, it's a kind of a weird question to ask because obviously, okay. Well, what is the green room lunch like when they have to bring it in for the sequester?
Well, I believe it was like sandwiches or something. Is that right?
Yeah, sandwiches and a pizza is what we got, and a salad of some type.
I gotta say, I swiped some of the pizza after the games were over because they just leave it in there, and it's not bad.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing compared to the pizza from Jersey and New York, but it's good pizza.
I just did not feel like greasy pizza right before I went on, so I didn't go for it.
Understandable.
So obviously you were in the commissary, Jason. So what did you have for lunch?
Pizza. It's easy. I'm a vegetarian, so it's quick. It's give me a slice, thank you. Let me go sit down.
Okay. Now, Alex, this is your first time, in this format for hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel. So I've this is something I normally ask of people their first time on, and I think everyone. I'm reasonably sure that
Everyone wants to go home, Andy. Come on.
we're only at the hour mark, so
we went an hour and a half last week.
Okay, so my question for you is everyone has that origin story as to how they became Jeopardy fans. So Alex, Jacob, how did you become a Jeopardy fan in the first place?
Well, I guess my mom watched it a lot when I was a kid, so I guess that would be the main, just kind of being real young and not being able to get many of the answers. She would do pretty well, and just kind of wanting to know more. I would say that's where it started.
Very nice, very nice. Andrew, did I ask you that question when I did the interview with you?
I think you did. It was just it was. I didn't grow up in this country, so I didn't get Jeopardy until I was in college and stuff. But I liked watching from back then, and I don't know. I thought I'd be reasonably good at it, so I tried out a number of times. But it's nice that a show like that is on prime time, frankly, given the times we live in. So it's somewhat inspiring. It's an island of something, right? Island of sanity.
So one more question that's just come in on the YouTube chat that I will ask quickly. Did any of you guys find a difference in playing before or after lunch breaks? From any point in your respective runs?
Oh.
Most of my games, not to talk about anything in the future yet to air, either way. During my teacher's tournament run, the after lunch games were incredibly stressful. And it's possible because that's, it was the finals. But I couldn't bring myself to eat in between my Wednesday semifinal and my Thursday and Friday finals. So I was kind of a wreck. But beyond that, that was the only time I did it. So.
Yeah, I never ate much either.
I seem to recall hearing stories that you took 3 bites from your burrito and put it down.
Something like that. It probably wasn't a burrito, but
I don't know. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Seth.
Well, I don't know why, but I always played better after lunch. In my first run, my 4th game was my first runaway, and the 5th game was close to a runaway, but one of the other contestants got a late daily double and almost caught me. And then the single best game I've ever played was my 10th game after lunch on my 2nd day. And I think the one right before that was a runaway or close. Wait a minute, no, maybe it wasn't. But I felt, I don't know what it was. But for some reason, like after lunch, I always had a whatchamacallit bar, and maybe that's like my spinach to Popeye. So.
Interesting.
I don't think it was so much lunch. I just felt more tired during my first run towards the end of the day, just because they were the 4th and 5th games of the day. But I don't think lunch had a lot to do with it. I do remember during my first run, I really wanted to win the Wednesday game because I actually wanted to go to lunch. And if I had lost, they wouldn't have paid for my lunch. So yeah, I remember thinking I need to win this because otherwise I have to buy my own lunch.
It's fine.
So on that note, I think it's a good time to finish up for the evening, I'd like to thank all four of you for joining me on the hashtag Jeopardy live panel this evening. I'm going to do this again once all of the tournament games are done next Monday night. We're going to stick with 9:15 at least until, at least as long as HQ Trivia keeps on going, because they seem to enjoy letting people play trivia for 15 minutes from 9 to 9:15 for lots and lots of money. So from that perspective, I think 9:15 is a good time to start Jeopardy live panel these days. So we'll keep doing that. So once again, thanks to all four of you for joining me on panel tonight. I thought it was a great discussion. So yeah, let me just get the credits up so we can certainly, because it sounds like Alex wants to go. That's all.
No, I was just kidding. I was giving you a hard time.
So once again, so for Alex, for Andrew, for Jason, for Seth, I'm Andy Saunders. This was hashtag Jeopardy live panel, and we'll be back next Monday night at 9:15. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.
Right.
Good night.
Thanks, Andy.
And Andy,